All right, thank you for tuning in. 6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Sorry, the clock is so small. I got to get a little closer to it. The Art of Connection is the book we're going to talk about. I found it on Amazon, and it's getting really good reviews, and we have the author on the phone. He is Michael J. Gelb. Look at this, 18 customer reviews, 5 stars. The book just came out, right? Am I right about that? Came out in August. And so let's find out about this. Michael is he leads seminars for Nike, Microsoft, Merck, DuPont, VPQ. Hey, if there's anything you need to learn how to connect for, it's your job, right? But not only that, in your personal relationship, he also teaches at the University of Darden School of Business and the London Business School. His book is called The Art of Connection, 7 relationship building skills every leader needs now. Good morning, Michael J. Gelb. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Thank you very much.
Where are you calling from?
I'm in Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Sleepy Hollow. Where's that?
It's 26 miles north of Grand Central Station along the beautiful Hudson River.
Oh, okay. Well, we're sort of be close to you. Rob and I are going up to New York next week. So we'll be in the city and on Long Island and that whole area over there.
Excellent. Yeah, well, there's a lot of energy in New York.
There's some I grew up there. There's a lot of New York still in me, and I feel like to connect to what you're talking about here, I feel like the way I learned how to meet people, how to befriend them, how to let them know that I'm safe or that I'm friendly, does stem from some part of that New York culture, and not that it's the only way to do it, though. Down here in the South, I noticed there's another way of doing it, and it works too. So I'm guessing there's more than one way to skin this cat. Am I right?
Very much so. My first corporate engagement, the first time I was invited to lead a seminar for a company, was in Switzerland many, many years ago, and I had people from Italy, I had people from Japan, from France, from Australia, and over the years I've traveled the world. I've worked with people from all kinds of different cultures, and there are lots of different styles. You know, the New York style is definitely different than the style in the south of the U.S., and it's different from the style in California.
Yes.
And it's way different from what it's like in Mumbai or Delhi.
Right.
However, what is the same in all of these different places is empathy and connecting live with the real person that you're with, and that requires letting go of our habits or our preconceptions that we might have if we just assume that everybody responds like a New Yorker or everybody responds like the way we grew up with. So that's part of the point of the book, is getting people out of their habitual, automatic, unconscious orientation and developing a lot more freedom to connect.
Do you know, I was up in Quebec one time, in French-speaking Quebec, and there was a guy who came into the hotel, and he was clearly from New York. He had the New York accent, and he said, "Hey, I have a booking here," and he started talking in English right away. Now, I couldn't speak French, but I knew how to say bonjour.
Right.
and I think that was a moment right there where I cringed because, oh my gosh, he's one of us, and oh my gosh, can't he at least show that he wants to try? You know, that whole thing of using the language of the place you are, even if you have to resort to your own with, sign language or something. Although in that particular case, everybody spoke English.
But even so, the sense of connectedness that comes if you make the attempt to speak in people's language, and that's actually a perfect metaphor, because even if there aren't different language systems, everyone actually speaks their own language and sees the world in their own unique way. So even if you have people who are from New York who speak the same language, or from Quebec and speak the same language and have the same cultural background and have all their qualifications for humanness exactly the same, they still manage to miscommunicate on a regular basis.
So let's talk about the skills that you have in the book and apply them to next Thursday when we're all together with our families, and those who are very liberal are with those family members who are very conservative, and and all of a sudden you know that there's a bad moment just waiting to happen. But you can avoid the bad moment if you say, you know what, Uncle Charlie is pretty conservative. Let's not start anything, okay? And maybe Uncle Charlie has to be on board with that same attitude, don't you think?
Well, even if Uncle Charlie isn't on board, because this is the thing, is if both parties are subscribing to the notion of a creative dialogue and an empathic understanding of one another, well, then they're in pretty good shape and we don't have to worry about them. It's more that situation where you may have an intention to want to not get involved in the same kinds of discussions that happened last Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right.
Right? So we don't want to just rehearse the same old disagreements and have the same locked positions. So what can you do under those circumstances? And the book really is a step-by-step guide to help people connect with other people under all kinds of circumstances. And the first principle is to embrace humility. So it's to, instead of going into any dialogue with anybody else with the notion that you need to be right and you have to get your opinion across and you have to convince them and get them to agree with you, you take the attitude instead, what can I learn about this person that I might not have understood previously? And especially when somebody has an opinion that they hold vehemently, if you focus on the opinion, if you focus on their position, especially if it's one you disagree with,
right,
you're probably just going to make the situation worse. But if you get curious about what are the underlying needs that drive this person to hold this particular position, and get curious and ask them questions. Well, first of all, people love to talk about themselves.
Sure.
And they love to talk about the genesis of their position, and they'll probably be taken off guard the fact that you're actually interested in showing respect and concern and empathy, and you'd be surprised how disarming that can be.
So I kind of threw you a curveball. I made it personal. I made it about Thanksgiving, but I got the feeling the book is more about business relationships and business connections. But the fact that you were able to take the information in the book and apply it to my Thanksgiving dinner, it tells me that there's really not much difference in the skill sets. Am I right with that kind of conclusion?
Very much so. That's people used to, this notion of they called it work-life balance, and I think it's one of these ideas that's just way out of date. That somehow you're going to have a different way of being at work and a different way of being at home. You're these two separate people, and it's different skills required to connect with people. Well, guess what? You're the same person at work, at home. Your habits and tendencies that either strengthen your relationships or weaken your relationships will be the same at work and at home. And the universal principles that can guide you to have much healthier, happier, more fulfilling, more successful relationships are just the same at work and at home. So we can move very fluidly between those contexts.
And within the rapport that is developed between the business owner and the customer, you have to have that, not just that rapport, but the mutual respect where the owner or the person you're dealing with in business has to respect what the customer is saying, and then the customer has to respect what the business person is saying.
Very much so. And that's predicated on empathy and caring, because people are different. We have however many billion people we have, and unless you're an identical twin, your DNA is unique in all of human history. And your brain is uniquely wired from anyone else. So everybody is unique, everybody's different, everybody's a whole universe unto themselves. And at the same time, everyone is exactly the same. Everyone would, right? Everyone wants respect. Everyone wants to be appreciated for their uniqueness, and that's just true in any context.
In the photographs of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump in the Philippines, he's wearing what is formal wear in their country. It looks different than what we would call formal wear in our country. I don't know if you saw the pictures. It looks like a big white pajama top or something to our eyes. But he knew that wearing that would be a sign of respect, I suppose.
Yes.
I wonder sometimes if we, especially when we're like 17 and we're at that rebellious stage, like when we show up at the Thanksgiving dinner with the torn jeans, and are we doing that sometimes to do exactly the opposite of what you're saying? In other words, is that part of our evolvement as human beings? We have to go through that resentful period, and the clothing is either how we get the people to like us or get the people to say, oh my gosh, this guy's getting on my nerves. I mean, do we do that on purpose sometimes?
I'm sure we do. And I'd say that the point about teenagers, I think, is that teenagers are often going through such profound transformation in their hormonal reality, for one thing, and their sense of trying to figure out who they are and how they fit in. So frequently they're effectively crying out in their behavior saying, help me, see me, get me, don't try to fit me into some pre-digested pablum way of being in the world. And so there's a healthy element in that, even though it can seem a little bit off-putting if you're the parent or the sibling who has to deal with it.
And that's one of the points you make. I mean, turning friction into momentum, but you have to do it in such a way that you're not condescending to that person, that you're going to be able to move forward on any issue.
Exactly. Well, that's why we call it the art of connection, because even though there's a lot of science to back this up, the science, the research is fascinating in terms of empathy, in terms of what it takes to be an effective communicator. Actually applying it is challenging. And one thing that really helps, though, when it comes to these conflicts is, let's say you mentioned Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the holiday is that you celebrate with your family. People get together and they like to watch football. I love to watch football. My family used to always play football every Thanksgiving as well.
Wow, nice.
So we'd have our touch football game, and we'd come in and watch more football. And my brothers actually have been involved in sports radio. My nephew is a broadcaster for the Philadelphia Eagles, so we're a big sports family. But sports is interesting because we keep score. And there's a winner and a loser. It's the nature of a contest. The problem comes when we start to view our relationships and our conflicts with our teenager or our spouse or our uncle who has a different political point of view, or another team at work or another division at work. When we start to view people that we are engaged with in some kind of conflict, when we view that as a contest to be won or lost, to crush the opposition, to score more points, that is not a constructive, healthy, or useful way to view conflict. It's great for contest, but for conflict, we want to think about how do we meet the needs of the stakeholders in this situation in creative ways, in ways that we haven't thought of yet. And that's a whole other way of thinking about it.
And that's where becoming a listener comes into play.
Very much so. Because how can you meet other people's needs if you don't know what they are? If you just assume what they are, put people in a category, and then you're not listening. And we see this, in our society. It seems to be at a pretty egregious circumstance at the moment where people are so polarized, they're not listening, they're demonizing one another, And we can look at very different points of view. And if we can get to what's driving them, what are the underlying needs, it's only then that we have hope of addressing them in a creative way that we haven't thought of.
Absolutely.
Instead of just holding our positions with more and more tenacity and making the situation more and more fraught with unnecessary negativity.
Wow, I hope everybody's hearing that message. That is really a good message. And in this job as interviewers, we learned a long time ago that listening was half of it. And it's the easiest thing you can do, as long as you don't allow yourself to be distracted. I mean, just listen to what people have to say. It just makes... We had a compliment early on, 15 years ago probably, and it went something like this: "Oh my gosh, I had a great interview with those two. They're so intelligent." And I said to Robin, "Really? What did we say?" And then we listened back to the interview, and we didn't say much. The point is that they felt we were smart because we were listening. I guess, I don't know.
And asking questions.
Well, this is the first principle in the book, is to embrace humility. It's to ask questions. It's to be curious. It's to be open. It's to be receptive. And guess what? People do love that because it's increasingly rare.
Right.
And then they feel respected. And then a lot of times they discover that they have something more intelligent to say than they might have said otherwise. And when people feel uplifted, when they feel more intelligent, when they feel they're engaged in real exploration because you're guiding it with questions and openness and curiosity, well, yeah, all of a sudden they think, wow, you're just so brilliant.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? Going back to the Thanksgiving scenario, let's say I'm 62, okay, so let's say I'm there with a 15-year-old something, a nephew or something, and he's got spiked hair and, and a piercing through his cheek and ripped jeans and, and he's and he wants to be a girl and everything else is different than what I grew up with, right? I mean, instead of being condescending, I could say to him, so what's new with you, And then he talks to me and maybe he'll say, oh, I got a new band. It's called Hell or something.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, wow, tell me about the music. Oh, you wouldn't like the music, Uncle Larry. It's got, I said, wow, what do you do? Play guitar? And so I think sooner or later, I think the conversation would break down whatever barriers you imagined were there. And I'm hoping that our world leaders are doing similar things.
That's a wonderful example. I had a client who used to be part of the Bell system, and then he actually became the CEO of the first mobile telephone version of the Bell system. And then he went out to Seattle and got a job running one of these high-tech portable phone companies when the phones before the iPhone, just the generation just before the iPhone. But it was pretty high-tech, and this guy called me up, and he said, man, you got to come out here and help me. I have all these people working for me. They have spiky hair. They have tattoos. They have nose rings. What am I? Get over here. Help me connect with these people. And the great thing is that you got it just right. It's genuine curiosity and not in that condescending way. Just you will learn. I mean, it's fascinating what one learns. Yeah. I love being around people who have whole different ways of expressing themselves. I mean, it's I do kung fu, tai chi, qigong, and one of the schools that I train at, some of the practitioners are in their early 20s. I'm 65. So we have this common language, which is very just very practical, just can you push me over, can I push you over? So but seriously, it's, you're engaging right away with people in a way that's a real leveler, because it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how big you are. All that matters is if you can't push me over and you want to, suddenly you have more respect for me, and vice versa. But one of the guys I was doing this pushing practice with is in a progressive metal band, I didn't even know. Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah. What the heck is that?
I didn't know what progressive metal was. I didn't know. I just had no idea. But I said to him, we became buddies, and I said, "Hey, man, turn me on. What are your favorite progressive metal bands, and why do you like them?" Now, did I love it? Am I suddenly a big fan of it? I can't say that I am.
Right.
But did my understanding and my appreciation for him and why he likes it, did that evolve through our dialogue? Yes, it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right on, and that is applicable in the whatever connections we're talking about, whether it is Thanksgiving or whether it's Trump and the Philippine president or Kim Jong-un. Maybe I think he's got pretty good connection skills. I mean, we've got lots of things we can talk about with him, but I think that's one area he is pretty good at.
Who are we talking about?
Trump.
Kim Jong-un or
the president? No, I don't know about Kim Jong-un. I don't know about him.
I don't know what. Well, I don't know. Calling Kim Jong-un little and fat might not be the best way.
Well, you're also encouraging people to move out of their comfort zones, to explore their other options, like you did with the heavy metal guy. Right.
Well, that's the thing. It's when we have a genuine sense of curiosity and caring and empathy, when people get the sense that we actually value them and care about them. I big part of what I actually do for a living is I coach CEOs, and I work with companies to create cultures that will be more creative, more innovative, more productive, more fun places to work. And the CEOs that I've been lucky enough to work with are, without exception, kind, contactful, and respectful of everyone they meet, not just their potential biggest customer, not just the shareholder, not just the CEO of another company, but literally the person who cleans the office, the person who works in the cafeteria. They treat everybody with respect and kindness and caring. It's as though they seem to understand that we maybe have different ranks in society and different pay grades and different positions, but on a soul level, on a fundamental level of our humanness, we're all connected, we're all the same. And that ability to just connect with people in that core way, I'm telling you, this one guy I work with used to be the CEO of the Detroit Pistons. He's featured in the book.
Nice.
I have him as an example of the versatile leader. And this guy walk around the building with him, and he says hello to the person working in the cafeteria. He asks him a question about their child that was a real question. It wasn't just some generic fake question. He had remembered whatever it was about them and asked them and listened to the answer. And you watch people light up when here's the number one top guy in the organization, and he's genuinely taking an interest in them. I mean, the buy-in you get to what that CEO is aiming to do, the extent to which that person then has more energy to bring to the workplace, that's leadership. So that's part of what I coach people to develop, and that's what the book is all about.
The book, again, is called The Art of Connection. Michael J. Gelb is the author. I found that on Amazon, where you have 18 5-star reviews. That's entirely unbelievable. 5-star reviews across the board. I have a copy of the book. If you want the one that was sent to me, call me and I'll give it to you. The rest of us have to go online and buy it or go to a bookstore and buy it. I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to recommend?
If people go to michaelgelb.com, that's G-E-L-B, michaelgelb.com. There's lots of cool free stuff there, michaelgelb.com.
Michael, thank you so much for being on the air with us today. It was fun.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Foster. In Manila for an East Asia summit,
Michael,
President Trump's met for the first time with the Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte.
President Trump said that he had a great relationship with the man accused of carrying out a campaign of extrajudicial killings in his nation's war on drugs. Duterte's spokesman denied that the subject of human rights was ever broached, but White House spokeswoman Sarah